What's your advice to people in terms of better preparing themselves, their organization for this change?
It's a people, process, and technology problem. But we like to focus on the
Technology first, then process, then people at the end.
And it's the opposite. It's not a technology constraint. It's not a process constraint. It's a people question. The adoption hesitation is not because the tool doesn't do great things. It's because people aren't being brought along. They're not addressing the people question.
Hi everyone, this is Vijay Rayapati, CEO of Atomicwork. I'm really excited to bring this special episode of Atomic Conversations from Las Vegas. We are at PinkElephant 25. I have DuMoulin with me. He has such an amazing career. It's been like 28 years, Troy.
Years, yes.
Yeah, I mean, rarely in a world where people want to change career every other year or so. Here we have someone, probably last of their kind, working on a very passionate area of research and development. So Troy works as VP Research and Development at Pink. Welcome, Troy, to Atomic Conversation.
It's amazing to be here, Vijay. Thank you for the invitation to talk.
No, thank you. Thank you for joining us. So you've been around for a long time, right? And so there is so much changing, almost every year. Now we have like this biggest change called AI. So we'd love to know a bit about you, what got you into IT, and then, we'll get to the AI.
Interesting background that I have. It's not the typical background you see with the average person reaching for a technical career. I actually started with kind of a business focus and degree, but I actually got introduced to theater at one point and actually spent about 3 years doing that. And I went back and actually got a theological degree.
Wow, theater and theology.
And then education. And so all of those things together with a background and an interest in passion and technology basically come together to basically create the synergy of what I do now. It's because I'm passionately talking about causes and topics and key best practices that we want to pursue in the context of just the betterment of value generation and the creation of organizational collaboration, if you will.
Got it. No, amazing. So you started with theater, then got into theology, and then got into technology.
No.
And you're constantly learning, right? What are the biggest changes you have seen in last 25, 30 years of IT?
Well, obviously the technology has been disrupting and has constantly been renewing the whole thing we've done. And as we've seen, being a Generation X, we've seen a few major shifts in our time. Right? We moved from centralized computing to distributed computing, and then of course the mobile computing era, the ubiquitous internet, and every single time this creates churn, this creates opportunity, new technologies emerge, new ways of working. But in some ways, some things stay the same. These management practices around IT service management, they remain fundamentally true. If it's broken, we need a common way of finding a way to fix it, to restore it. If you're asking for something, I need to identify what's the best way to efficiently get it to you.
Sure.
I have to maintain high reliability systems, by at the same time focusing on customer experience and user experience type scenarios. And so while the technologies come and they go, the human side of the equation stays more or less stable. And of course, the question about what is that human side now becomes an interesting conversation when we talk about artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So everybody is basically saying, AI is like the next big industrial revolution, right? It's as big as electricity, and it's as big as invention of, the steam power. And so what are your thoughts, around AI?
So it's interesting. I follow the work of Carlotta Perez. Dr. Carlotta Perez talks about the ideas around technology disruptions. And it doesn't have to simply be around a digital technology.
Right.
But the phases of these disruptions are repeating patterns. And so the first phase is you have a previous technology that's, let's call it the predominant technology of use. But there's this kind of thing that's emerging in the shadows, this eruption period. And only certain organizations have access to it. Those which have high resources and research and development budgets, or the organization that is engineering that technology from scratch, they have access to it. But for the most part, for the rest of us, it's not thing that we're too focused on because it's over there. It's out of sight, out of mind. But what changes at this moment is the venture capitalists start to get wind of the technology. And this is the next big thing. And there's going to be that possibility to make some form of major difference, whether it's a a cause or it's for profit, the hype curve goes crazy at this moment.
Yeah.
And it's on everybody's lips and everybody's talking about it. It's all the tech articles are talking about it. But at that point, there's a lot of frenetic energy, but not a lot of return on investment.
Right.
Because the funding at this point is venture funded.
Yeah.
Not on ROI,
it's on a promise, not on the proof.
On
right?
the promise of the future.
Yeah.
But that frenzy period is typically followed by some level of consolidation.
Right.
We call it maybe a .com bubble burst, but it doesn't kill the technology. It's a pause, it's a reset. Because what happens is there's two types of organizations. There's that brick and mortar organization coming out from the previous major technology, trying to reinvent itself and bolt on this new technology that is becoming the thing.
Right.
Then there's this organization that no one's heard of before, that's been engineered and architected only on, has no baggage, and they're equally potentially disruptive because they are leading the way, and they're actually some of the organizations that were part of that earliest phase.
Yeah.
And so these two types of organizations emerge in the market, and this is where the world begins to take notice. It moves from this sugar rush, this frenzy period, to transitional, where actual organizations begin to adopt it and use it in certain use cases. And that transitional period of time is a period of time that's very important, because those organizations that intentionally enter in successfully move through to the period on the other side called synergy. Well, it's now synergized into their workflow. And now the revenue is based on actual use case, not venture funding.
Yeah.
And this synergy gives them an advantage because they have early market advantage. And they eventually will find themselves into maturity, which is the final stage. But here's the thing. All the time, in every single scenario, that frenzy moment will turn into transition.
Right.
Those organizations that go into transition first and are successful come out the other side, take advantage. Then we have organizations that go in but stumble. There's a leadership change. There's a challenge that they have to face, and they maybe even fall back out. Or there's those organizations that don't go into the transition saying, "Oh, that's not real. It's hype. It's some kind of it's not really return on investment at this point," because again, the return on investment comes later in the synergy phase. But what happens at this point is that organization that exits the transitional phase first has that advantage. And they typically will take advantage of that. And often those that stumble or not even enter become, well, basically the merger and acquisition targets of these organizations. So as we think about that technology move through the transition, there's a risk of not going in and not coming out quickly. And here's the difference in that every single technology adoption pattern follows the same pattern. But it's the time of transition that is interesting and different this time.
Yeah.
Because in the past, we'll even take cloud, for example. We had early 2000s, the frenzy, and then we had the .com crash, but didn't kill .com, and it didn't kill the cloud-based technology. But we still have organizations today that are asking the question, should we do cloud-based technology? And that makes me sad because it's way too late for these folks to survive. But the reality is the transitional period, let's call that 5 to 8, maybe 10 years.
How many years would you give for AI for a transitional?
12 to 24 months, Matt.
12 to 24 months.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And
so the change is coming, and it's coming really fast.
And most people are still not even realizing that this is going to happen or have entered the transitional phase.
Yeah.
Well, it's not quite true, because there's the idea of what's called narrow AI or specialized AI.
Yeah.
The underpinning automation, that's coming through the transitional phase, if not in synergy already for some organizations.
Sure.
But when it's Gen AI, I could argue we're actually still in the frenzy phase.
Yeah.
So there's different elements of AI that are different parts of this process of adoption. And so, but the key to your point is that the time we have to deal with this is alarmingly short. And most people are just waking up now to that reality. And there's this kind of OMG type of moment where they're realizing we have to get into this transitional period and make it through it. This is where there's quite a bit of I'll call it an organizational concern at this moment with AI, because it's a shocking moment for them to realize.
Right. So what's your advice for like a lot of IT leaders and CIOs, watch Atomic Conversation? What's your advice for this? There are like 3 types of CIO and IT leaders we have seen. There are like this change embracers, who kind of like want to really like lead the change. And then there are like this change catalysts. They are like, hey, we got to adopt it, use it. They will not push hard, but they will at least make attempts. And what we call this as change watchers, who are just observing that, like, okay, some things are changing. Let me wait and watch, right? So what's your advice to CIOs and IT leaders, around this transition period for AI, on how do they approach, how do they adopt, should they wait and watch, or like, how can they take initiatives internally to prepare their organization for this big change that all of us are saying is going to bring a lot of benefits. It also has things that we need to take care of, from a business perspective, from a community and, societal and larger humanity kind of perspective.
Right. Well, first, the frenzy is always followed by transition and synergy. So it's not a
Yeah.
question of if, just when.
Yes.
The when is much shorter than we've ever had before. And here's the next piece. You need a plan.
Yeah.
Because right now, depending on what research document you've read, whether it's the Asana report or it's the
World Economic
Forum report that
Yeah.
just dropped, and Grammarly even just put out a report. IBM had their report.
Right.
And so they're all saying roughly the same thing. There's a lot of interest, experimentation playing
Yeah.
with, but
Yeah.
not a lot of intentional plan. And so most leaders will say it's important, like 80% will say it's important that we do this,
Yes.
but only 30% of organizations have actually an intentional plan to how to do it. And if they do have a plan, it's only an engineering plan.
Got it.
They don't have a people strategy and how to
Yeah.
move their workforce and development of their people skills and knowledge. They don't have an organizational change plan. And that's key because right now the majority of resistance for adoption are the people.
Right.
So they're not treating it like an organizational change or a cultural change issue. They don't have a plan for how we're going to engage with partners and vendors and strategic relationships. They do not have a plan and how this connects to their overall strategy from the point of view of the business side, not just the IT side.
Right.
And so if they have a plan, they're playing with large language models right now,
Yeah.
or buying a solution or two in a point solution basis. It's very limited if it exists at all. And for most, it doesn't exist.
Got
And so the old saying, hope is not a plan, is critical at this point. And you don't have a
Fantastic.
lot of time to come up with a plan.
Yeah. So what's your practical advice, to IT leaders who are basically looking at this and saying they have this intent that we gotta change, but as you said, like most of them don't have an intentional plan, how they can go about it?
Well, first of all, one of the other interesting data points in this research is that very few IT leaders actually have deep understanding themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're expected to have an
Right.
understanding
Yeah.
by the people that fund their organizations. They don't want to admit to their people that they don't understand it, but yet very few have actually dug deep into what it actually is and what it means,
Sure.
which in my opinion is part of the reason they're so delayed in their plan. And so they need to immediately begin digging deep into the ramifications of large language models and AI and Gen AI and all of that context of how that underpins their key solutions, how that's going to impact digital strategy, which is greater than IT strategy.
Yeah.
Right. And so we talk about digital transformation, which has been a topic for a number of years.
Right.
This is part of that.
Yeah.
And how we embed that within the digital strategy for engagement with our outside community, the ordering and the provisioning process, the back-end delivery systems, all of that has to be considered as part of their larger digital strategy as a brand.
Right.
And as a strategic partner, that means they need to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And right now, in my opinion, based on observation and conversation, most do not.
So you're basically saying, for your business, first figure out your digital strategy before you think of AI strategy, because AI is a technology, but how are you going to use that to essentially transform your business?
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
First, a lot of organizations aren't really focusing on their digital strategy.
Right.
So if the business isn't actually doing that, does that mean the IT organization in IT strategy waits? No, they have to lead and have the observation and the opportunity to present the opportunity. But if the business is speaking about digital strategy, then yes, the technologist has to bring in this now new component to that digital strategy.
Right.
I'd like to say that a lot of our IT professionals have a direct strategy and direction from the business. Often it doesn't exist, right? Often it's, lifting from the bottom up. The key is to understand that digital strategy is larger than the technology strategy.
Absolutely.
And that AI applies to both, and
Correct.
they're connected. And so that's part of the education as well. Like there's a lot of key stakeholders in critical governance roles that are not well informed, at a personal level about the meaning of what we're describing.
Yeah.
And they think because of past disruptions, whether it would be, again, ubiquitous internet or mobile or even distributed computing, they might have a good half dozen years.
Sure. Sure.
That's not the case in this case.
So how do somebody who has become just a CIO recently, right? And what's the best way for them to come up with digital strategy? Should they collaborate with their executive team, work more closely with CEO and board? Because every board is basically asking, hey, how do we improve our business productivity, and how do we basically drive our efficiency, using technology, and how do we be ready for this new change called AI, so that we are future proofing ourselves, not just for like survival, but for success.
My best recommendation, those are all excellent suggestions, but to do it through a balanced perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have to look far. We have frameworks like the balanced scorecard to keep
Sure.
us focused on what balance
Balance.
means. So yes, we want to focus on innovation and how that changes and enhances and transforms our product experience and projects around that. But we have to also focus on the customer sat side,
Right.
the experience management side. But we have to also understand the internal operational side, which is how do we underpin those classic ITSM processes for delivery of stable operations and speed to market context for just value delivery supporting the larger. And then the last one is the financial side, right? How do we use AI to consolidate and reduce legacy and technical debt to support just the fiducial responsibility of the organization? So if an organization is going to build strategic goals using AI, they have to go back to the classic BSC, the balanced scorecard, to ensure that they don't go one direction only and then actually negate the advantages they have, but to balance that. And part of that is the people side, right? As well. That's the key.
So let's say, as a IT leader and CIO, you have, let's say, $100 as a budget, right? And you have to make the choice of how many dollars are you going to bet on AI, whether it's for experimentation, proof of value, or production. What would you allocate?
A significant amount, because at this point,
Right.
there's no arguing the reality of that transformational type approach, that we are quickly coming out of the frenzy into transition, if not synergy.
Yeah.
That if they already are in a lagging position, they haven't even entered transition, they're already probably behind some of their, their competitive organizations. And at this point, there's not, I would say, an equitable thing, another technology that's as transformative or disruptive that would be the thing that takes away from that. Even the idea of like the most recent use, I'm just thinking out loud here, the idea of cloud workflows and such, that should already be in place.
Yeah.
This is the new disruptive. This is the new potential for advantage. And this is the new potential of being taken advantage of if you're not on the bandwagon early enough. Otherwise, you become a targeted victim for those who do get through before you. There are two primary drivers for anything we do. There's the value we can give to the customer, to the business.
Yes.
There's other, in my opinion, the most important driver is the fear of being missing out, or the competitive side. When your adversary has advantage over you, your competitor, that's at complete disadvantage, right? This is the issue that we have to focus on, is that it's not just the value, it's the risk of not having it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a pretty high risk.
Got it. And so you've been around for like almost 3 decades, right? In technology.
I feel old.
No, I mean, I've been around for 2+ decades, so we are not far away. But what's the best career advice you got, Try?
You have to be hungry for continuous learning. That's what's kind of kept me going all these years. There are people in our organizations that are wired to see it, own it, solve it, do it. Right? Don't wait for people to hand you a direction. Don't wait for people to hand you, permission to go and learn about this new thing. It's self-preservation as well as just interesting stuff. For me, there hasn't been a lot new in our industry. Probably the last new thing to talk about was Google Site Reliability Engineering. It's like 5 to 6 years old already.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, experience management has recently bubbled up, but it's really kind of an augmentation of service level management.
Sure.
So it's not net new, it's just an expansion of what we knew. When AI arrived and I understood the potential implications and did deep research, I got excited because it was something new. Something completely new to bite into, but it's connected to everything else.
Yeah.
And for me, as I've shared with you earlier, it's not just about technology.
Yeah.
For PinkElephant overall, we are concerned with the human side of this.
Right.
We'll let guys like you and your organization do great work in the solution space. We want to talk about the process space. We want to talk about the people, knowledge, and skills that we have to move so that we create relevance for these individuals going forward. And that has to happen relatively quickly. And we really, as an industry, as an organization, haven't been doing good or well on intentional development of our people since the pandemic. We have not really come out of a crisis mode yet and invested in our people and the skills and talent that they need for the future, for themselves, but also for the brand. And so obviously I'm an education provider, right?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be my focus. But there's no denying the inevitability of this. The speed at which it's happening is a critical thing to consider. And the fact that if the organization is going to be successful, it's not just on their engineering prowess, but on their organizational adoption. And the key thing is the tool's already there. The resistance isn't the fact that the tool doesn't exist. It's the people side. It's an OCM question.
Yeah, so OCM is organizational change management. Change management has been like one of the key drivers, right, that IT has brought to the business, for a long time. With AI, you're not only looking at the technology side of the change, but you're looking at the people side of the change from a reskilling, and process side of the change from a rewiring.
You're more optimistic than I am. We don't do organizational change very well. We focus on the technology and keep forgetting the people side. And
what's your advice to people in terms of, better preparing themselves, their organization for this change?
It's a people, process, and technology problem. But we like to focus on the
technology first, then process, then people at the end.
And it's the opposite. Right now, literally, if you look at any research paper you care to look at, it's not a technology constraint. It's not a process constraint because the processes are embedded within the technology.
Right.
It's a people question. The adoption hesitation is not because the tool doesn't do great things. It's because people aren't being brought along. Right. They're not addressing the people question.
No, it is so true. I think as business leaders and technology leaders, we are in a rush to, get things done. And we often forget to carry our people along, both in terms of preparing them for that change and, enabling them to go through that change. And this is such a transition, as you said, there is like less time. So everybody is in a rush.
And now becoming panicked.
No, absolutely. And IT has been like one of these like careers, which will become probably more relevant in the age of AI, because somebody has to enable almost every business through this transition. And we need to bring in young people. So young people who want to get into IT, right? What is your advice to them?
Well, the roles in IT are changing with the context of AI. So AI is taking over the function, the task, the execution, the build. But we need the human in the loop. We need that validation. We need that subject matter expertise to assess, use empathy, wisdom to apply the information. Information technology has always been about enabling human beings to make decisions with that. Operational technology obviously is more autonomous. But the reality is we need people who are good at data analytics, have critical thinking, have a focus on the human skills that are unique to the humanity, which is the empathy, the wisdom, the emotional intelligence, the sense of justice. Just right now, a lot of our people have more of a technical skill set versus this softer side. And that's an interesting premise because that means a shift in focus for the skills that we typically teach for. And here's another challenge. Our current education system, especially our university systems, are lagging behind in this context. They're not teaching the skills that we need for the future. They're teaching the skills we needed 20 years ago.
That's so true. Great. It is such a well said, essentially the human skills will become a lot more important than technology skills for people and organizations to embrace this wave of technology called AI to be successful. So think about your business strategy and digital strategy, to truly leverage, how you can apply AI for your business. Thank you, Troy, for joining us. It's a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure, Vijay.
Thank you.